now the pleasure call on Professor Arthur Smith to speak in favour of the motion.
Madam President, officers of the Union, ladies and gentlemen, the motion before us is that the doctrine of creation is more valid than the theory of evolution. Now, I'd like, in the short time available, to state just what evolution does believe in a formula, and I can reduce it to a formula. It's easier to do it that way, so you can get clear thoughts. And then I'm going to reduce the doctrine of creation to a formula too. The first formula that I'm going to give you on the doctrine, well, I'll do evolution first. The theory of evolution is this: the inorganic matter plus energy plus time gave once biogenesis. Now, everybody says, of course, you can't repeat it. And now, I say this: if it's a scientific doctrine, you must be able to repeat it. And as we can't, it is therefore falls by the board within 1 minute as being unscientific. You can't repeat it. Now, the second formula that I'd like to reduce it, would you, if you'd be so kind, just let me get the second formula off my chest and I'll give it to you. You get evolutive speciation. That is the type of evolution from amoeba up to man. Evolutive speciation. Now, those are the two formulae for evolution that I want to give you tonight. Let me give you now the two formula reduced on a parallel basis to for the doctrine of creation. Creationists believe this: if you take inorganic matter and you add to inorganic matter time, and then you add to that energy, and then you add to that information, extrinsic information, then you will get out biogenesis. That's the creationist formula which I understand as a scientific creation. That is, inorganic matter plus time plus energy plus information will give you biogenesis. Now, every scientist that's working in biogenesis today, you take Spiegelman, who died, and Kornberg, they did it by that method. They added to inorganic matter time plus energy plus information. Now, Madam President and ladies and gentlemen, honourable members here, let's remember this one basic fact: that information is a surprise effect in the terminology of Wiener and Shannon. And a surprise effect can't be derived from natural law. It is a surprise effect. If it were derivable from natural law, it would lose its nature as information. Now, nobody expects today to get out of inorganic matter by putting into it the Darwinian formula, the evolutionary formula of energy and time to get out of that. If you suggest that, as I did to my students in Chicago, that they took a wearing blender and did that to inorganic matter, they were furious. Here's Professor Thesis. Well, I said, why do you believe it then? Well, there was no answer, because if you reduce it to an answer, they say that it only happened once. And if it happened once, of course, it's not scientific. Well, if you use the scientific method, you know that it's wrong. It doesn't work. That's the first formula for the creation doctrine. The second formula parallel to the one I gave for evolution is simply this. If you take the primeval cell, a simple cell, and you add time to it, okay, and then you add energy to it, okay, and then you add information, not derivable from natural law by definition, then you will get out evolutive speciation. Now, we know that that's the method used today in genetic manipulation to produce new species. If you take Escherichia coli and you want Escherichia coli to produce human insulin, for which it doesn't have the surprise effects in its genes, what you do is you simply open the ring of the Escherichia coli and you splice in a synthetic human gene for insulin, and then you close it up again, and your Escherichia coli, which couldn't beforehand produce human insulin, will now be, as it were, a new species with new properties because you put new information into it. Now, if the evolutionists here are going to tell me that you can get the new gene which is put in and full of surprise effects, that you derive it from natural law, all I can say is they don't know information theory. Because the information theory says that it's a theory in which the information is a surprise effect. And the surprise effects, when you put them into the genes, do work themselves out in producing a new gene. Yes, sir?
I would just like to comfort you by assuring you, A, I do know some information theory, and B, I do assert the things you deny to be impossible, and I shall say so at greater length in a moment.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Well, anyway, let's put it like this then, just to make it quite sure that we know what we're talking about. I do think this, that if you were to take the zygote of a chimpanzee, and if it were possible to synthesize the clonal genes which are necessary for producing the ability to speak, that is, for the wiring of the brain which controls the speech center according to Eccles, and also which controls the shape and size of the larynx and the computer wiring which controls all that, I do think myself that it would be possible to produce a monkey, a chimpanzee, which could speak. What it would say, I don't know, but it would be theoretically possible to speak if you could put in the information. But the information that's got to be put in is a surprise effect, which you don't derive from natural law, but which is put in by imposing onto natural law the information bits which you need. Now, what is really happening is this. Looking at the genetic code is a bit more complicated than reading the newspaper, but the coding, as Professor Andrews said, is a form of language. Now, the language encodes surprise effects, information effects, which will produce the information necessary, say, to produce a kidney, or produce a heart, or produce the wiring of the brain so that a monkey can speak. Now, if you think that surprise effects of that time to produce a machine such as we have so that we can speak, if you think that that arose by mutation and sorting out by natural selection, well, I'm afraid I have very great difficulties in believing that. You take the morning newspaper with the code and the news on it of the day's events that have just gone by, you might just as well attempt to derive the information in the newspaper from the laws which govern the paper. Now, the information in a newspaper is imprinted onto the laws, chemical laws, which govern the properties of the paper. But to attempt to derive the morning's news from the chemistry of the paper is just a fool's job. You couldn't do it. And so when you read a code right, the genetic code, is so obviously imprinted according to the laws of information and language onto the genetic code that I'm just surprised in the age of information theory that anyone should try to develop an evolutionary theory today from natural processes. And that is what evolution is trying to do. Now I want to give you just 3 particular forms and facts to show that the creation formula is more valid than the evolutionary formula. The first one is this. I'm going to take 3. I was going to go into the third law of thermodynamics, but I saw the reaction to the second law of thermodynamics and I've decided against it. So I'll leave that one out and spare you that, Madam President and the rest of you. Let's start with this, Fox and Miller. Every book is full of Fox and Miller. Now, Fox and Miller, produced by sparking methane, ammonia, and water vapor together, trying to mimic primitive atmosphere, and they did get out alanine. Now, alanine is one of the basic building blocks of the proteins. They also got out 1 or 2 primary amines. Now, alanine is a bifunctional molecule. It has the amino group on it, and it has the COH group on it, and it will polymerize, and it will produce long chains. Now, it also produces, the system also produces some primary simple amines, which are monofunctional. Now, if you look at any book on polymer chemistry today, you'll find that life is known to run on 2 types of polymer. One of these polymers is the protein type polymer, and the second type of polymer is the DNA type, the nucleotide type polymer. Now, if you look at the chemistry of these things, you'll know this, that to get a polymer to be produced from any bifunctional molecule, you must have the polymers present in the correct equivalent proportions. You make nylon this way and it comes out beautifully. You can demonstrate it to the students. Now, when Fox and Miller produced his lists of substances we got out, he did not get out any nucleotide. There is no evidence for that at all, none whatsoever. And yet you'll find repeatedly brought out in evolutionary books that he got out some forms of nucleotides. This isn't true. Any polymer chemist knows that, because this, and I can finish off this point with this, if you get a monofunctional molecule pushed into a mixture of bifunctional molecules, the moment you introduce 2 or 3 nanograms of a monofunctional molecule into the equivalent mixture of 2 bifunctional molecules which are producing polymer, all polymer formation is stopped. If you want to ask me about the chemistry of this afterwards, I will do it for you, but if you would please not ask me now, I'd be most grateful. We know why it stopped, because you get one molecule going in, which is then incapable of further polymerization because it's only got one group to go in with, and the one group is taken away. So the theoretical possibility of getting out the polymers on which life runs by the process put forward by Fox and Miller does scientifically not exist. It isn't there, it won't happen, and all the experiments have shown that you never get a protein out that way, and therefore you never get an enzyme out that way, and therefore you never get out a DNA molecule or a nucleotide molecule that way. It can't be done. Ask any polymer chemistry, and you'll find what I'm talking about is in all the polymer textbooks, if you like to have a look at it. That's the first point. The second point is this, that if you got out your alanine, which is the basis of the proteins of life, the alanine exists in 2 forms. a left-handed form and a right-handed form. Like a glove, a left-handed hand fits into a left-handed glove, and a right-handed hand fits into a right-handed glove. Now, the activity of an enzyme comes from this fact that the left hands in all the amino acids which make up the enzymes, of which we have many, many thousands to keep us alive just now, left hands are coupled finger to thumb, as it were, finger to thumb, so you get 20,000 left hands. And these 20,000 left hands, you have more if you like, up to 100,000, you get a really large molecule. They have to fit into their substrates, which are 20,000, 40,000 and more left-handed gloves. Now, if you get all the left-handed hands and the left-handed gloves just fit in right, they move in and out, and you get your enzymatic activity, and the problem works without difficulty. You can get all sorts of substances out that way, which you couldn't get out by ordinary chemistry. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Madam President, if you have a molecule of 20,000 long left-handed and 20,000 left-handed gloves, and you get as much as one right-hand molecule in the middle of 20,000 left-hand, you get no fit. And if there's no fit, there's no chemical activity, and your life stops immediately. This has been proved. We know this. You take an enzyme and you put the wrong optical item in it, it stops its activity immediately. Chemistry, natural law, there's no entropy handle onto the production of left-handed over right-handed or left-handed. All produces 50% of each. Now, if you have a higgledy-piggledy mixture of left-right, 20,000 long, left-right, 20,000 long, you get no fit and no activity. And that corresponds with all our chemical experience. The idea of getting our active enzyme by Fox and Miller is just for the birds. It just doesn't work. Everybody knows it doesn't work. The way you get it to work is you put in the information which you need just to stop or break down the right-handed molecules and only have the left. And that is not intrinsic in the properties of inorganic matter. You have to have information imposed on the genetic code in order to do that, or the chemist can do it with his own brains if he knows how. You must have the creationist formula of extrinsic information to get the right chemistry out to produce either the biogenesis or the evolutive speciation to put into the genetic code the extra organs that we need to build up, say, from the amoeba to man type of information. Yes?
Sir, you talk a lot about external sources, by which I presume the creations you mean God. Let me ask you just two questions about, first, as a scientist, you attach a lot of importance to evidence. What evidence is there for the existence of God? You've put forward a lot of negative evidence. It's difficult to explain all this. Therefore, let's invoke supernatural cure and call it God. But that's not science, that's wishful thinking. So what positive evidence has God? Second, Karl Popper suggested that the fundamental criteria for any scientific theory, including evolution, must be falsifiability. What would have to happen for it not to be true? Evolution has answered that question. How would you answer? What would have to happen for creation not to be true?
Thank you, sir. I think that's a very progressive, good, productive question, two questions to ask me. The scientific creationist says that you need, above natural law, extrinsic information. He does not specify where you're going to get it from. He believes, with Noam Chomsky, that the origin of information, because it's a surprise effect, is not attackable by the human brain, and I believe the same. Second thing is that the religious creationist, and I don't speak tonight as a religious creationist. I speak as a scientific creationist. I didn't come here to teach Madam President or anybody else anything about religious creation. I say from a scientific point of view, you must have, as Hoyle has pointed out, a source of information, surprise effects, acting on inorganic matter in order to do it. The religious creationist says God did it, or Allah did it, or Yahweh did it, or Jesus Christ did it. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying from a scientific point of view, the scientific method is to add extrinsic information to the system in order to get out an order which isn't intrinsic in inorganic matter. That's the answer to my question, sir. Okay? I leave the question of God entirely out tonight. I'd never dare come to such an august society as this and talk about theology when I've been asked to talk about science. I was specifically asked to talk about science, Madam President, and I will do so. Now, let's go to the last point, because how much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay, that'll just suit me fine, 5 minutes. Now, in this august city where I was born, and I haven't been back for 35 years, there was a debate in 1860 between Soapy Sam, Wilberforce, and between T.H. Huxley. And Huxley listened to Paley's natural theology from Soapy Sam, got very, very short with the poor old man, and he said, look, we don't want to say that because there's a creation, there is a creator. Let's forget that, because I'm going to prove to you that you can forget it. So, Soapy Sam said, do so. And he did it like this, T.H. Huxley. And I'm going to use the same example to show the flaw in his thinking as far as I can, and leave it to you to decide what you want to do. He said, let's take the 6 eternal typewriters which you know all about. You've all read T.H. Huxley, haven't you, on this? 6 eternal typewriters, we'll put 6 eternal electrons who never die, and we'll let them strum on these things, and they've got endless amounts of paper, and endless amounts of ribbon, and endless amounts of ball bearings that they don't go to pieces. Okay? Now he said at the end of eternity, or when eternity is almost by, I have great difficulties about that one, but that's what he said. He said, when I look at the nonsense that they typed throughout all eternity, I found in the papers that they wrote the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now, Wilberforce got very annoyed about that. He said, it's impossible. So, Huxley said to him, look, you're a professor of mathematics, aren't you? So he said, yes. But he said, don't you know that the probability formula says that where T is infinite, and where the amount of matter is infinite, their probability is 1. That is, you will certainly get all events take place if you have time and matter enough. Now, the Earth is very old. We've got lots of time, we've got lots of matter in the universe, and therefore the probability is 1 that you, Bishop Wilberforce, that you are like the 23rd Psalm, you were formed without an author. Because the 23rd Psalm was formed by strumming, you see, without David as the author. Now, as David's Psalm was produced without David, said T.H. Huxley, so you, according to probability law, could be produced without a creator. Now, that argument is still recognized as valid today. There was an article in the journal Science quite recently about it, and said anybody who didn't know this article was ignorant. Now, let's take the flaw in the argument now and ask you to look at this ever so carefully. It is very difficult to see. It took 40 degrees of frost in Chicago when I was crossing a pedestrian crossing, when it suddenly flashed on me where the flaw in the argument was. And it's this. I got out of a train at 30 degrees centigrade, and it was 40 degrees below outside, and it suddenly dawned on me what had gone wrong. Now, you take not 6 eternal typewriters, like Huxley had, you take Wilder Smith typewriters. These are special typewriters. typewriters which have a little extra lever in it. When the lever is pushed to the left, they type like an ordinary typewriter. That is, when A comes into my mind, or into the A's mind, he presses the key A, and A goes through the machine onto the paper. Okay? And there it stays. When B comes into my mind, B goes down my arm through the machine into the paper, and it stays on the paper. Now, when I push, that's how he got his sound. You see, by machines like that. Now, if you push the lever to the left, did I say right or left when I started? The other side, anyway. You push it round the other way, the machine types like this. A comes into my brain, or the eighth brain. I don't mind you comparing with one, very cool. As you push the A key down, the A goes through the machine onto the paper, stays there for a finite time. Did you listen carefully? Stays there for a finite time, and then rises without trace from the paper, and goes back through the machine and into the apes or my brain. That is, the machine types and untypes in a finite time. It is completely reversible. It was before the days of word processing. Completely reversible, leaf no trace. Now, if you had apes on a reversible typewriter like that, ladies and gentlemen, how long would it take to type the 23rd Psalm on such machines like that? Well, obviously, if everything comes back where it came from, they could type till kingdom come for the theologian, and you would never get anything out. Not at all, because it's completely reversible. I have 1 minute left, sir. My time is up. I'm so sorry. I can't give you what doesn't belong to me. If that's the case, remember this, and this is the point I want to finish on, that all the reactions on which the body works chemically are reversible, because they're enzymatic reactions, and the enzymes only catalyze reversible reactions. They are reversible typewriters. Now, you can't do any synthesis unless you can do as Prigogine says. You've got to put any reaction to get structuralization, to use his term, far away from equilibrium in order to do it. Now, information, surprising that, on the genetic code, do it, and they make the structure. But to derive structuralization, evolutive speciation, and biogenesis from natural law is just not science today. You can't do it. You can only derive if you add to natural law matter plus information. And if you think information comes from stochastic chemistry, I'm afraid you're beyond medical aid. Thank you.